When awareness becomes your home, something very simple begins to reveal itself. You notice, perhaps even now, that this moment is already here. It does not need to be created. It does not need to be improved. It simply is. You are here. There is the sense of being. Before any thought about who you are, before any story of your past or future, there is this simple presence. As you listen, you might become aware of the movement of the mind. Thoughts appear, they comment, they compare, they say, I like this, or I don't understand this, or what does this mean for me? Just notice that there is a thought, and there is an awareness of that thought. So already you can sense two dimensions. There is the content, the words in the mind, the images, the feelings, and there is the space in which they arise. You are usually identified with the content. You say, this is me, my thoughts, my feelings, my story. But perhaps you can begin to sense that who you are in a deeper way is the space that knows the content, the awareness itself. You are not your thoughts. They come, they go, they change. Sometimes they contradict each other. Sometimes they are helpful. Sometimes they create suffering. If who you are were a thought, then who you are would constantly change. You would disappear with every gap in thinking. But you do not. You remain. Perhaps you can notice now, without trying to change anything, the next thought that appears. Simply wait. A thought will come. Maybe it is about something you need to do later. Maybe it is about yourself. When it comes, just notice, here is a thought. And then notice that there is something here that is aware of the thought. That aware presence is silently here even between thoughts. It is not noisy, it does not comment, it simply is. This aware presence is like the sky. Thoughts, emotions, and sense perceptions are like clouds. The cloud. Ideas move, they shift, they have different shapes, but the sky is not affected by them. You may find it helpful to sense yourself as the sky, rather than as any particular cloud. Your life situation, which is the collection of circumstances, problems, tasks, achievements, and failures, is not your life in its deepest sense. Your life situation is always changing. It belongs to time. Your life in the deepest sense is this presence that is aware of your life situation. This stillness, this beingness. True freedom begins the moment you realize you are not the voice in your head. The voice continues for a while. It comments, it interprets, it judges. But now there is a new factor, awareness. You know that the voice is there, you see it. And in that seeing, something loosens. The ego is this sense of me that is totally identified with the voice in the head. It feels itself as the center of everything. It constantly seeks to strengthen itself through comparison, through being right, through being seen, through being special, or sometimes through being especially unfortunate. The ego loves to be right. It loves to have an enemy, even a very small one. It says, I know, or they don't understand, or I should be different, or they should be different. It lives in stories. You may notice in your daily life how quickly the mind creates a story about what is happening. This is bad. This is good. This shouldn't be happening. They should not behave like this. The story itself is not the problem. It is the identification with the story that creates suffering. When you completely believe your thoughts, you are trapped in them. You react as if they were absolutely true. You resist what is. And so, suffering appears. But in the moment, you become aware, this is a thought. This is a story arising now. A little space opens. You are no longer fully inside the story, you are aware of it. That is the beginning of freedom. Let us bring attention now to this moment as it is. You might notice your breathing. You are not controlling the breath. It happens by itself. The body is breathing. You can feel perhaps the rise and fall in the chest, a gentle movement in the belly, the air entering, the air leaving. Allow your attention to rest there just for a few moments. As you sense the breath, you may also notice that thoughts continue in the background. You do not need to fight them. You do not need to stop them. They can be there. You simply remain aware. Awareness is like a light. Wherever it shines, unconsciousness begins to dissolve. If you bring awareness to the breath becomes a doorway into presence. If you bring awareness to a thought, the thought loses some of its power over you. If you bring awareness to an emotion, the emotion can be felt fully, without turning into a drama. The ego resists this because it feels threatened. It believes, if I am not constantly thinking about myself, about my problems, about my opinions, I will disappear. In a way, it is true. The ego does disappear gradually in the light of awareness. But what remains is not a void. What remains is a simple, peaceful presence that is much closer to who you truly are. The mind is always moving toward the future or the past. It rarely finds rest in the present moment. It says, when this happens, then I will be happy. Or, if only that had not happened, I would be at peace. So, it postpones life somewhere else. But life is always now. This moment is all there ever is. The past is remembered now. The future is imagined now. Everything appears in this field of present awareness. When you deeply realize this, something shifts. You stop looking for yourself in time. You stop expecting salvation from some future event. You recognize that what you have been searching for, peace, fulfillment, home, is actually the very space of awareness in which each moment unfolds. Perhaps you can sense now a kind of quietness behind these words. The words point, but they are not the essence. The essence is the stillness you can notice in yourself as you listen. Sometimes there is also the dimension of what we could call the pain body. This is the accumulated emotional pain of the past. It lives in the body as energetic imprints. It can be triggered by events, by words, even by thoughts. When it is activated, you may feel a strong surge of emotion, anger, fear, sadness, resentment. In those moments, the mind often joins the pain body and creates a story. This should not be happening. They have wronged me. I am a victim. I cannot take this anymore. The pain body loves this. It feeds on the drama. It wants more. Perhaps you have experienced this. A small incident happens and suddenly the reaction in you is much bigger than the situation seems to warrant. You say things that later you regret. You feel taken over. In those moments, it is helpful to recognize, the pain body is active. By naming it, you have already brought a little awareness to it. Then, instead of acting it out or suppressing it, you can allow it to be felt in the body. You feel the energy of it. You notice the tightness, the heat, the heaviness. You stay present with it without a story. When you do this, the pain body cannot feed on your thoughts. It cannot grow. It will still move. It may feel intense, but slowly, as awareness continues to be present, it begins to dissolve. This is not something you do once. It is a practice of living with awareness. Each time the pain body arises, you have a choice to be pulled into unconscious reactivity or to remain as the observing presence. There is no judgment here. Sometimes you will be pulled in. That is part of the learning. Even that can later be seen and thus become part of your awakening. Acceptance is a key word. Acceptance does not mean liking a situation. It does not mean you will not take action if action is needed. It simply means, in this moment, you do not resist the fact that this is what is happening. You might notice how often the mind says this should not be happening. This inner no creates tension. It separates you from life as it is. It amplifies the peace. When you notice this inner no, you can gently ask, what happens if I allow this moment to be as it is, just as an experiment? Immediately a little space opens. The inner tension loosens, even if the outer situation remains the same. From that space, any action you take will be more aligned, more intelligent, because it does not come from unconscious reactivity, but from a deeper stillness. Surrender is not a passive resignation. It is a deeply alive state. You are no longer pushing against reality. You are aligned with it. Then life can move through you more freely. In relationships, all of this becomes very visible. Relationships are mirrors. They reflect back to you the places where you are still unconscious, where the ego is still active, where the pain body still lives. You may notice how quickly the ego reacts when someone says something that feels critical or dismissive. Immediately a story arises. They do not respect me. They should not talk to me like that. I need to defend myself. And often in the body, the pain body awakens. There is a contraction, a tightness, a heat. In such moments, there is usually very little space. The words that come are automatic. They continue the pattern. But as awareness grows, something new becomes possible. Perhaps next time you notice the first stirrings. You feel the contraction beginning. You sense the urge to defend, to attack, to withdraw. In that very moment of noticing, there is already a gap. You could stay silent for a second. You could feel the aliveness in your hands, in your feet. You bring attention into the body. This simple shift, out of the mental story, into the felt sense of the inner body, brings you back to the now. The ego cannot operate well in the now. It needs past and future. It needs stories. From this new place you may still speak. You may say what needs to be said. But the words now come from presence, not from a reactive pattern. In this way, presence transforms relationships, not by imposing spiritual ideas on others, not by trying to change them, but by changing the field of consciousness that you bring into each encounter. When you are present with another human being, you are no longer relating only from the level of roles and stories. You, me, what you did, what I need. There is a deeper recognition. This is another expression of the same one life. From that recognition arises a natural compassion, a listening, a softness. Even if the other person is still completely identified with their mind, your presence is like a quiet invitation. It does not argue, it does not try to convince, it simply is. Let us bring attention for a moment more deeply into the inner body. You might close your eyes, if that is comfortable, or simply soften your gaze. Become aware of your hands from within, not by looking at them, but by feeling them from the inside. Is there not a subtle vibration there, a sense of aliveness? Then bring that same attention into your feet. Again, a gentle aliveness. It is not a strong sensation, it is subtle, but as you give it attention, it becomes clearer. Now, see your whole body as a field of aliveness from the inside. The mind may comment, I don't feel anything, or this is strange. That is fine. Let the thoughts be there, but keep some attention in the inner body. This inner body awareness is a doorway into the dimension of being. It anchors you in the now. It lessens the pull of the mind. When thoughts arise, they are now arising in a field of embodied presence. They do not carry you away so easily. Notice also the space around the body. There is the inner field of aliveness, and there is the outer space. Both are known in awareness. Slowly, the boundary between inside and outside becomes less rigid. There is simply one continuous field of aware presence in which body, thoughts, sensations, and the environment all appear. This presence is who you are at the deepest level. It has no form, yet it allows all forms to be. Awakening is not something far away that may or may not happen to you in the future. It is the simple shift of identity from the content of consciousness to the space of consciousness itself, from the story of me to the awareness in which that story arises. Of course, the story of me will continue for a while. The body continues, the personality continues. The roles continue. You still have a name, you still live somewhere, you still have tasks to do. Nothing on the surface needs to suddenly vanish. What changes is the sense of self. You no longer derive your identity primarily from the things that happen, from success or failure, from praise or blame, from gain or loss. You sense a deeper continuity that is always here, untouched. When something pleasant happens, you enjoy it, but you do not cling to it as the source of your being. When something difficult happens, you feel it, but you know in a deeper way that who you are is not diminished by it. This does not make you cold or distant. On the contrary, it allows a more authentic human expression. Because you are not constantly defending an image, you can be more open, more honest, more vulnerable when needed. The drama lessens, the simplicity increases. You may notice as awareness grows that certain patterns in your life begin to fall away. Compulsive thinking lessens. Certain forms of entertainment that once were attractive lose their pull. You become more comfortable with simple things, sitting quietly, walking, looking at the sky, listening to sounds. Life becomes less about what can I get and more about how can I be fully present with what is. There is a quiet joy in just being. Sometimes the mind will say, this is not enough, I need more, I need something special. That is the old conditioning. You can notice that thought, smile inwardly perhaps, and return to the simplicity of the present moment. When awareness becomes your home, even ordinary activities are suffused with presence. Washing dishes, walking down a street, listening to someone speak. These are no longer just means to an end, they are expressions of the one life unfolding now. You are not striving to be present, you are simply noticing when you are lost in thought and returning gently, again and again. Over time, the gaps in thinking may become more frequent. These gaps are not empty in a negative sense, they are full of a quiet aliveness. In these gaps, you may sense a background peace that is not dependent on circumstances. It has always been there. Only the noise of the mind obscured it. There may still be challenges. The body may experience illness, relationships may end, plans may fail. This is the realm of form, and in the realm of form, everything is unstable, impermanent. But now you no longer expect permanency from what is by nature transitory. You know the nature of form is change, and you also know there is a formless dimension in you that is not touched by this change. This recognition allows a deep relaxation. You do not need to hold on so tightly. You do not need to constantly manage and control everything. You still act when action is needed. You still think when thinking is helpful. But you know that your fundamental identity does not depend on the success of these actions or the outcome of these thoughts. So there is a lightness. Sometimes a quiet sense of gratitude arises, for no reason in particular, simply because being is recognized. If the mind says, I don't understand this, that is also fine. Understanding belongs to the mind, but what we are pointing to is beyond conceptual understanding. It can be sensed, it can be recognized in the stillness of attention, not in the movement of thought. As you move through your day, you can gently return again and again to simple anchors, the breath, the inner body, the sense of being here. You may ask, am I present now? Not as an intellectual question, but as a pointer back to the immediacy of this moment. In time, you may notice that presence becomes more continuous. Even when you are engaged in activity, a part of your attention remains resting in the background, awareness. This is when awareness has truly become your home. The outer circumstances will continue to change. The body will age. People will come and go. Experiences will arise and pass. But inwardly, you rest more and more in that which does not come and go. Right now, without waiting for anything to be different, you can notice this stillness. You do not need to reach for it. You simply notice that underneath thoughts, underneath sensations, there is a quiet space. Rest there, just for a moment. Nothing to achieve, nothing to become, just this. If the mind comments, let it. Thoughts can move on the surface, like ripples on water. The depth of the lake is not disturbed. You are that depth, you are that awareness, you are at home.